Well, hello everyone. I had some technical difficulties and had to end the live stream because everything stopped working. But I'm back. I think I've got it all working again. We'll see. And the live stream that I just didn't record. So restarting. I'm going to share this on Discord and Twitter again. All right. Let's presume that this will work. Unfortunately, I don't know. I guess I have to recover some of my thoughts because I really want some of the thoughts to be available for members. Because the old live stream deleted. There's only 30 seconds of it on the recording. Someone says, "Dang man, brah." What do you mean same thing happened? Are you talking about the last live stream only having 30 seconds recorded? Maybe it will. But we'll see. Looks like ExoCharts is working now. Looks like TradingView is working now. I restarted my computer. I'm not sure what was going on there. Give everyone a couple minutes to get back in. Anyway, so where we left off is I was explaining well, actually I guess where we left off was I was explaining that nothing would work. Is it super laggy now? Somebody says super laggy. Something must be going on. Maybe it's my computer. Maybe it's the internet. Very laggy, huh? Interesting. Well, I don't know. You know what? Yeah, something's wrong. Maybe I'm going to have to end this, and maybe I'll just make a video with my thoughts. And I'll share it on Twitter and Discord. I'll make the video a little later. Computer seems to be running fine. Someone else is saying it's all good for them. I don't know how it would be laggy for everyone, but all right. Well, I'm just going to end the live stream then. Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Okay, people are saying it's good. Some people are saying it's getting better. I don't know. Usually no problems, but today's it seems like there is. All right. Well, I guess in the last live stream I went over this whole case for a range forming here over the next several weeks. We looked at a couple fractals. We looked at fractals from I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not going to go over it in depth here. I'll just make a standalone video about it just because this whole recording, I guess, could just get deleted anyways, and like the last one did. We went over a few fractals of what a range like this could look like. I'm very open to taking profits more aggressively locally here and looking out for this idea of a range forming. Somebody asked what the picture in the thumbnail is, what the crab's about. Just referring to a crab market, so a sideways market. These highs are, you know, something like this. Maybe come up and take these highs, retest the range lows, maybe come grind down. I think I made a pretty interesting case for that idea, but we have to start rejecting from these highs, right? So I think these are nice local targets. There might be a nice short setup above. I kind of explained why I'm long into this move, I guess. I spent some of the live stream. Actually, I'm not going to delete that. I'm just going to turn it off for now. I'll come back and cover it later today. Maybe tomorrow, depending on what happens here. The whole sideways thing might become irrelevant if we just break out here. The case for getting long is just the bullish order flow. You can look at that briefly. Obviously, really bullish in the context of this retest of this wick, and then just ranging afterwards into really bullish order flow. Even on these retracements, really bullish order flow. I had mentioned, again, just getting long earlier in the Discord. Maybe recover some of the... so we're up, kind of closing in on these highs now. I had explained the case for getting long there. Just pointing out, at the time, bullish divergences forming. So, yeah, I'm not sure. This is how the stream looks to me for the choppiness. I'll take a look at that later. But anyways, let's head over back to the charts here. I guess it's a little... I restarted the live stream. We'll stay live as we kind of push up towards these levels. It's a little demoralizing in the moment to have all the stuff I just covered deleted. But I don't really feel like covering it all again. Also had mentioned I took a long on Doge today. We're up testing this descending trend line, taking some local highs. Pretty significant volume coming in here. Could always be wary of that rejection locally. This could easily turn to a local range. And then ETH doesn't look too bad here either. I had a long that just barely survived. We'll see. But let's keep an eye on Bitcoin here as we head up towards these local highs. If there's any evidence of a nice local short setup. And probably for me, I'm not going to be closing my entire longs, but be open to a head short. What would I like to see? Well, I'd like to see price break up into this level. A nice high volume spike. Obviously, we're going to see a shit ton of shorts likely get stopped out there. Wouldn't mind seeing some aggressive longs opening as well. It's not hard to understand why we would see a bunch of shorts stopped out after this aggressive trend. There's going to be people who are trailing their short stops under the previous highs. So this will be invalidation for not just the shorts taken down here, but for a lot of shorts taken all the way down. A lot will have moved their stops above this high and above this high. So expecting a big spike of liquidity there. Up into these highs, and might be a nice local short setup. Back, come retest these lows. This retest here, retest this pivot low, which was a retest of this low. I kind of explained that in the last live stream, but we'll get back into it. But it's not hard to imagine this structure, right? I'm not saying it's going to V-shape necessarily, but, you know, break this down, come back down. A little sooner would be nice. Come back and retest this trend line right at the 618 of the move, which is also this horizontal level. So that'll be an interesting level if we do reject. I think an interesting idea for a TP1 on longs here, or a head short if we break out looking for these highs. And keep an eye on order flow. Yeah, so I am interested in Tesla as well. I shared some time ago this idea on Tesla. I showed it up here. Price has dropped about 30% since then. I haven't changed this chart since then. And the idea would just be a long setup taking this pivot low into the 786 of this move, aligning with this ascending structure. The trigger for me would be to have price come up and maybe reclaim this, or we could range here a little bit and just a local setup, sweeping this low. But definitely keeping an eye on Tesla. I have some just higher time frame structures I'm watching. Might be willing to put on some long risk, and then maybe come up and wipe out this trend line liquidity up towards these highs. And then all the way back down into these lows. I have some ideas here. It's not all on the chart, but look at this beautiful 6 golden pocket rejection here. High to low, right into the golden pocket, right into this descending trend line. So this is just my view on Bitcoin locally. We're definitely seeing a reaction. Could call it the middle of the range if you want to pull this as a range, but I wouldn't call this a likely high. I could be completely wrong. We could just dump straight down here. Just from an order flow perspective, you could imagine there's a lot of liquidity building up above us, and there's certainly been a ton of absorption here. So my view here is that, is this likely to be a relevant high, front running this high, another lower high, let's say? No, I don't think so. I do not think so. Of course, I could just be wrong, but the only reason I don't think so is because someone's put in quite a bit of work to hold price up here. They've been capable of absorbing some pretty significant selling pressure. You know, both locally here, and so let's call it, 20 million delta. We have some more selling pressure coming in here, by the way, but a little bit of local absorption. You could look at that a little closer. Obviously, a lot of work in the context of this range. So as price pushes up towards some liquidity to the upside, they might be challenged for sure. But I would just put it this way. The traders that have put in all this work to hold price up with limit orders, there's no volume really here, right? It wouldn't be very likely they're not capable of pushing price up through this liquidity. And this is just very low volume, low delta. Our biggest delta spikes are just the selling. 5.5 million, 6.1 million, and even here, you could call this absorption, bullish absorption, which is more traders, maybe the same traders, just stepping in here and holding up this selling pressure for now. Which is just an indication. It's not a certainty. It's just an indication that somebody seems to be putting in some work to drive price towards the liquidity up here. And the liquidity is going to be obviously in the form of short stops. So there's no guarantees. Would I open my long here? No. Would I consider holding my long through some volatility here? Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's very rare, even in the strongest of trends, for price to go straight in one direction. So I don't think there's a good reason to get shaken out of the more bullish ideas here, personally. We can just look at this in this context. Maybe we come back and retest this. But again, even in pretty strong trends, how much relevance can you put on to every 5-minute candle? the broader context here, this still looks quite bullish. I think the interesting thing to do is going to be to watch some of this local order flow. So we can already see, I would say this, some really aggressive selling here. Way more aggressive than the buying on the uptrend. But there's been some aggressive buying on the uptrend. And I wouldn't be surprised if right now, at this very moment, there's a lot of people pretty worried about another lower high. And just, oh, this is trend continuation. You know, price was going up. They took a long, just saying, hey, I'm going to close this long because we just put in, it looks like we're putting in another lower high and the trend continues. I don't think that's an unreasonable perspective in terms of market structure. I mean, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. The early signs of a rejection here look kind of spooky. But from an order flow perspective, I mean, this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. It makes 0 sense to reject here. I can understand why, you know, we have a little reaction. I can understand why we are seeing some aggressive selling coming right into this reaction. But I couldn't come up with a very good explanation for why price isn't just going to keep pushing higher here. My live stream is ending, maybe. Someone says, damn. Someone says, we lost him. Oh, this is annoying. SOS, can anybody hear me? Hello? Did my whole explanation of why I think price is going to go higher come through on the live stream? Did you guys get the whole explanation for why? Okay. Nice. Well, anyways, I just kind of made the case for why I think it's likely that we push higher. I could be wrong, right? It's just anything can happen. But it'd be very hard to explain this being a major high. Yeah. Someone's asking if I still think the IBIT chart's relevant. And I do. Locally, IBIT is also bullish. IBIT was actually more relevant, but this is all a bullish divergence in order flow on IBIT. Heavy selling, getting absorbed. Arguably, IBIT was actually more relevant in terms of bearish signals on this downtrend, with the bearish divergence developing this entire way down. It wasn't a huge one relative to some of this that we've seen, but it was there, and it wasn't there on Bybit. It's hard though, like we're talking the volume in delta just so low in there. Let me go back here for a second. Yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, but I would say that it is still very relevant, and it is bullish right now locally here. This is all, it's syncing back up with Bybit's data, which is kind of nice to see. Generally it had been the same, and now it's syncing back up, so it's maybe considered a stronger confluence. But we can just see here, like, let's ignore some of the reactions of the candles. Other than just being afraid that price could, if you're in a long, let's say, that price could break down here, does it make any sense that the major high is in, that we're just going to put in another lower high, other than from an order flow perspective? And what I mean by somebody's putting in a lot of work to push price up here is, let's just say this. Like if we look at the volume up here, let's just say that some collection of people, it doesn't have to be one person, but it's very intentional, have absorbed in the context of this range hundreds of millions of dollars, let's say, right? Or let's say $100 million of Bitcoin. Just in this local range since yesterday, another 30, 40 million. And so as price comes up to test these highs, and we get this first rejection, and a lot of people are closing longs aggressively here, obviously worried. They absorb another 6 million. They absorb another 5.5 million here. There's no resistance here that's been tested. So for them to get wrecked, these people who have absorbed tens of millions, another 6 million, another 5 million, you'd have to suggest that they just completely ran out of money and they can't open another $100,000 of longs up here. Like that's why it's rejecting. They just can't break through the resistance. There's no volume or liquidity being tapped up here. So you would assume that who's ever working to drive price higher here, they're not going to be held down by these 500,000 64K delta candles, low volume. They need to drive price into all the shorts up here to liquidate them to take profits on their positions, right? That's the exit liquidity for them. You would presume. I'm not saying I know this with a certainty. I'm just saying that's the logical conclusion here, because we know a lot of work, and by work I mean effort, has been put into hold up price. Lots of selling absorbed. Price is being driven up. We know no liquidity has been tapped, so because we can see it in the volume in the delta, we know that there's probably a lot of liquidity above these highs. And we know that because price has been in a strong downtrend and there's going to be a lot of shorts. There's going to be people break out longing. And so why would it make sense to assume that this is going to be another major high? Could be a choppy high though. We'll see. Somebody's saying, what do I think happens after halving? I'll say this. What's the point of, at some point, me saying what I think is going to happen after halving, or me saying what I think is going to happen next Wednesday? We have levels, we have structure, and I look at the market every single day. So I'd like to see what happens up at these local highs. I'd like to see what happens up at these highs if we come and test them. You have some nice confluences around both. And I can only justify oh, wrong chart. Around these highs and around these highs. I can only justify so many predictions. This idea of a range looks interesting, but it only looks interesting if we reject and form a range. And so looking for signs of weakness, looking for signs of a rejection, sort of like in here, right? Like you could make a lot of decisions based on this. You could see this as bearish. You could see this as bullish. You could justify both. But for me, the bullish factor, the reason I'm wanting to long into this move is order flow is very bullish here. So locally and as well as in the context of this range. And so I'd say right now I'm bullish. See what happens if we test these highs here. This could be a nice local high, maybe come down and retest these lows. If we break out, looking for these highs. If we break out of these highs, then looking for these highs. And so the point of me not saying what I think is going to happen over the next week, let's say, is let's just see what happens here. We could just literally go straight up off of massive bullish divergences, get no reaction at any levels, and be at all-time highs today. So I think these are the relevant local levels. If we break out of this, I mean, it's kind of hard to say that you're not just going to all-time highs. I don't know what you're saying. Someone's saying, why is the fib retracement you have not on the high? It's on top of the range. Are you talking about this one? I don't know. It was pulled a little high. If that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking like some of these, this is a region, right? It's a region. I pull it here. I mean, people will say like I'll be on a live stream, for example, and I'll go like this and I'll just pull a fib. People say, oh, your fib's different than mine, but it's kind of like 0.1%. It's a bit of a region. Just quickly pulling it to demonstrate where it's pulled from. We have this fib aligned right above these highs. It's a bit of a region for the fib resistance. Liquidity there makes a lot of sense. I might be taking a short here, although it'll be very interesting to see how much liquidity is above. There's two scenarios. Well, there's probably more than two. But one is that there's a shit ton of liquidity up here. That every short that's opened has trailed their stops under this, or the majority. There's no way to know until we tap that level. And that everybody wants to break out long this. They look at this as this is the break in market structure that everyone's been waiting for. Frankly, not a lot of longs opening so far. People not particularly interested in this descending structure breakout, it appears. But anyways, you could imagine a scenario where we just see a ton of volume coming in here, a ton of positive delta, and then a rejection, and the continuation of a range. I'd be interested in shorting that. If there's not a lot of volume here, and price just breaks out and it looks almost like this, low volume, low delta, I'm not interested in shorting that, and I'm just going to presume we're heading up towards these highs, to where that liquidity is resting. And for those of you that don't understand, if I'm long from down here, let's say, if I have longs, I can't just unload my longs into thin air. I need liquidity on the other end. So, for example, like shorts getting stopped out. And so there's a big motivation for the people who have put in the work to build longs across here to push price into liquidity. If there's no liquidity up here and they can't unload their longs, then their incentive is just to keep pushing price up until they can unload their long positions. Now, this could take place over days or weeks as maybe price keeps ranging with bigger and bigger bullish divergences, and then we have the big move up. But some of that should be apparent within the context of this local price action if we do build a range. For anyone new tuning in, I had almost an hour-long live stream that I had technical difficulties, had to end it. I covered a bunch of other stuff, but it got deleted, so Probably going to have to come back and cover that later. Keeping an eye on Doge here as well as we come back up and retest these highs. You know, one of the good things about keeping an eye on Bitcoin and the order flow here is, generally speaking, alts are aligned with Bitcoin's price action. So if you're expecting a bigger move to the upside on Bitcoin, usually safe to assume that alts are going to follow generally. It wouldn't make sense, for example, for every alt. It's not that it's impossible, but every alt to just dump here if Bitcoin's pushing higher. But it wouldn't be unusual for Bitcoin to put in a high and alts to put in a high at the same time. Again, I would presume it's unlikely that this is the high still. From an order flow perspective. Been pretty clean long setups, honestly, into this bullish absorption. Even coming in a little late, front running these range lows. I took mine out of this breakout of this range off the big bullish divergence. There's also, I think, even a breakout long here. Mine was a break and a flip of this. I was sleeping through a lot of this ranging, big bullish divergences. A sweep of this low would have been a nice trigger as well, but we didn't get it. Big bullish divergences, sign of strength, nice long trigger. This retest was actually quite a nice idea as well. But then even here, just kind of grinding up into this breakout was a nice setup as well that I had mentioned on the last, just targeting up into these highs even. You know, adding for pretty low risk to longs. I think something like that is what I shared. But the reason being, we'll just cover this really quickly, is just the big bullish divergences forming locally. So between these lows and then on this push up, this retracement on that retest, very clean. This retracement, big bullish divergence, and we start grinding up off of it. Pretty high confidence breakout long here with this grinded, rounded structure off of these bullish divergences, because you know there's big traders stepping in here to hold up price, because we're seeing that big sell-offs locally getting absorbed, giving us that bullish order flow into this move, and we're even seeing that here. Big sell-off getting absorbed. We could chop around here a bit, but somebody's putting in some work, or some people's, to hold price up here and push it higher, which makes sense. They need some liquidity to get out of their longs. Whether or not they win, we'll find out. But the point being that they've absorbed so much, it makes no sense to think that they're tapped out at this point. They haven't even attempted to market long through any kind of meaningful resistance here. So I would assume they have more gunpowder to fire at this thing. Someone says, do you ever take into consideration the process of candle forming? Is the daily candle reclaims and open, leaving a wick behind, etc.? Well, I don't know exactly if this answers the question the way you're asking it, but I take into consideration the structure of price and candles. So, like, is price reclaiming structure? Like, for example, this would be like this big on bullish order flow, this big impulse up out of this local 15-minute range, reclaiming the range of support. That was a long trigger for me. And then this retest here back into this low. And so something like that, like, I'll just give an example of why it wouldn't really shake me out of a long position. even here as we were pushing up, I just had mentioned in the Discord, you know, maybe either a retest of this high or this high. You have that move down, retesting this horizontal level. That would just be a typical retest for before continuation. Might start seeing some of these longs get chopped up a little bit at the highs, but I wouldn't say there's anything like, so the idea here would be, it's not really relevant, honestly. I'm just going to be carrying my longs anyways. But, you know, maybe we have some risk coming into the market up at the highs here, 1.5 million, 2.1, 2.6 million positive delta, increase in open interest. This, maybe you start to see some of these guys get chopped up, come back into these local lows and range here a little bit. But for the bigger idea here, the bigger idea of these bullish divergences before the move up, I don't really think any of this is going to be likely to be relevant. I could be wrong, but wouldn't be surprised to start seeing some of these guys get chopped up a bit. But I'm not going to close my trades or anything because of it. You know, there's yeah, I guess this is kind of a point to be made, because I've had some comments that are something similar to this, not exactly, but like, for example, maybe we see $5 million long open here. We see a $5 million long open at market, get absorbed, and then, you know, price wicks down and push them underwater. I might say something like, I wouldn't be surprised to see that guy get wrecked, like price come down, take these lows and stop him out, because somebody just took the other side of that risk on $5 million long, and it's just a local thing. And I say something like, but I'm not going to trade it. Like, I'm not going to close my swing alongs here assuming he's going to get wrecked. I just wouldn't be surprised to see it. And so somebody might say something like, well, then what's the point of even mentioning it, right? Well, because it's happening. I mean, if price is moving up in an uptrend and I'm in a long here and I say, you know, here's 5 million negative delta, and we're already seeing signs of absorption on these pullbacks, support is still coming in here, and it makes no sense for, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to take a long here, but it's worth noting. I mean, to understand what's happening in price action doesn't mean you have to take a trade off of every candle where something relevant happens. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes you just note something that seems relevant. Something that would be relevant to me up above is if we take these highs and we see 100 million volume and 50 million positive delta. Yeah, I might take note of that. I might be taking some profits on my longs, be more interested in shorting that. If there's no volume, no delta, not so much. Someone says, do you use limit orders? Because if you want to see how price reacts to a level, limit orders might not be a good idea. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like if you say limit orders, for example, at key levels, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trading with limit orders, but in one case, you can be at the chart looking to see if anything is happening at that level, or in the other case, you're just kind of trading a level blind, right? And so the more information you have, probably the better. And if you're interested in trading a level and you can just see that price just blast straight through it, well, then you don't put on the trade. But if you see some things happening at the level that seem to be in line with your trade idea, then you have more information and you can just enter the trade live via market order. So there's a benefit to having more information if you have some edge in interpreting live data. And I like to think most of the time I do, but I don't think there's anything wrong with trading limit orders. So like I said, wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of a pullback ranging here as we do see some of these more aggressive longs start to come in. It's worth noting though that this is now this negative delta is coming in at an increase in open interest. So these are actually some aggressive shorts opening into this. The volume, nothing major, but someone's trying to put some pressure on these guys up here to stop them out. And so they might succeed locally. But they also might not. So these longs could be the same traders that are holding price up. They've longed up into some limit selling, and now some smaller traders are trying to shake them out of those longs as they aggressively short into this pullback, pushing price down, and maybe these little shorts get squeezed out. I don't really care that much what happens here, but a few million longs, aggressive longs, trapped up at the highs for now. I might end this live stream. I'll just say this, that right now, unless something crazy happens, which I doubt it will, we're kind of grinding up here towards a key level. I'm anticipating higher. Maybe we do range here a bit. Maybe we even come retest this breakout low, although I think that's not so likely, but we'll see. Looking for this high as the first major idea. If that breaks out, these highs up here. I'm going to film a video a little later talking about the higher time frame range ideas I covered in the last live stream. I just don't really feel like doing it back to back. What time is it? Technically Doge here with a sweep of this high into the trend line, and now is rejecting from the previous high. Something to note, this is a technical short trigger in a sense. Something to be aware of in a long. We still have the context of Bitcoin more likely to push higher overall, which might be applicable to Doge. In that long setup from down here. Let's see what happens here locally. I'll stay on the live stream. So we know there are some bigger traders putting in some effort to hold price up here, defending the selling in this uptrend, presumably still intending to push price higher. The last big sell-off here, 5.9 million delta. With some aggressive longs coming in up at these highs. And at the time, just mentioning, wouldn't be surprised to see price come down and run those out. It would be telling to see what happens here, I suppose. And the only reason I'm going to stay on is because what we might see It's just price come run these lows for a really quick reaction to the upside, and I'll stay on the live stream if that's the case. If we kind of keep ranging here and there's nothing very interesting that happens on a retest of these lows, then I'll probably end the live stream. Someone says, I did short that sweep thanks to your setups. I presume you're talking about the Doge sweep. You can kind of see here on the 1 minute chart, price just kind of grinding down here. Does you know, do any of my order flow explanations here, for anyone interested in order flow, are those making sense to everyone? What we'd be looking at here? Why we would maybe lean towards price pushing higher off of this? And why there was maybe some early signs of that being the case down here. And then even this was quite a nice indication of higher. So, you know, order flow is a huge edge, I think, if you understand it and you can interpret this and imagine the traders behind it. And sometimes it doesn't play out. And like I said, you know, the last few days have been some of my worst days in quite a while in terms of just a series of stops. You know, I had a long here, for example, that got stopped out, and I actually added to my long on the way down with the big bullish divergence forming against these lows. So added to my long, in a long, it all broke down, series of stops. Of course, it got back long because order flow is still bullish here. This is, like I mentioned in the last live stream, I guess I gave some examples too. Probably one of the first times in months that a bullish divergence or bullish absorption in order flow to this degree hasn't played out in a lower high, a higher low rather. And of course, that's always possible. I mentioned that every time I mention bullish or bearish order flow, that it doesn't mean price has to go up. It's simply a high probability confluence with technical ideas. And so it is one of the reasons that I got long out of here. And it'd be one of the reasons why I would maybe look to be adding to my longs into this move. It's one of the reasons I'd be looking for higher yet. And I think just because a bullish divergence doesn't play out one time out of 10, that you should maybe don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's maybe not even the right saying for that instance. Yeah, I mean, what I don't really want to sit here too long. What time? We have a 30-minute candle closing in 2 minutes. A new 4-hour candle in 30 minutes. So let's just kind of imagine, you know, over the next 30 minutes probably, if we have some volatility, let's say, around this next 4-hour candle, maybe we range here a bit. Maybe that 4-hour candle takes that low, the open, come and take these highs then, or maybe it comes and retests this, and we take these highs into the next 4-hour candle, maybe in like 45 minutes. Or we could just push up in this candle. But just from like a structural perspective, kind of like this, right? You have the 4-hour candle, the new one open, put in a little wick, and then continue to the upside. Also look for that volatility around those 4-hour candle opens. And so even, order flow gives a little bit of an edge if you were scalping here. Just here, understanding why, you could see a little bit of a case to be made. Not a maybe super strong one, but you do have some of these aggressive longs coming up into these highs. Why not shake them out locally? Put in another higher low. I'm not going to get into RSI at the moment, but somebody says you can also see it in the RSI. And all I want to say is this, that CVD is nothing to do with RSI. The divergences aren't the same. They don't work the same. The only thing it has in common with RSI is that the data can be represented as a line. That's it. So it's not the same. It's not a momentum indicator. The line just represents this down here, which is the delta inside of the candles, the market longs and market shorts, the actual orders. So if I went in and put in a $20 million market long here, we would see that inside this candle, these are the longs, 81K, 83, 43. These are the market selling, market buying rather. Same data shown down here, cumulative volume data shown across the bottom here, the ultimate volume shown here, and this line graph is just representing the delta in each candle overlaid with price. And so anyways, the whole point is, the only point I'm making is it's nothing to do with RSI or momentum indicators. It's just showing the orders coming in. Yeah, you can go to, there's quite a few free CBD programs. Coinalyze.net has a free CBD indicator that's identical to ExoCharts, where you can get this line graph data. Some of the like the bid-ask profiles and some of the data you can see inside the candles here and footprints aren't available. But I would say the line graph is the cleanest way to visualize the data, especially for a beginner. Because all this is representing here, for example, if we go down to the CBD in this session, you have 8.2 million, say negative 9 million delta at the lows here. And then here we have negative 9.9 million. And here we have negative 5.1 million. And so and there was a session change there. But all that's showing is this to this is showing that difference of the negative delta distributed down here as a line graph relative to price. So essentially it's like saying this. If we add up all the delta in all the candles here in the market buying and market selling, there's a net negative of represented by this line graph. If we add up all the market buying and market selling between this, there's a negative delta. So there's more market selling than there is market buying. And when price is moving up on a negative cumulative volume delta, market orders move price, market buying, market selling. And if delta is going down as price is moving up, the only way that can happen is if bigger traders are stepping in and pushing price higher by absorbing all the selling pressure. And that's bullish in the sense that there's big traders stepping in willing to absorb selling pressure. And I'm just going to go to a really obvious case of that in an uptrend. I may have to go to the 15-minute chart, and then I'll end the live stream probably after this. Unless something really interesting is happening. So let's go to a case of this in an uptrend really quickly. That was quite apparent. It's right in here. All right, so here, ranging with really big bullish divergences. Again, just because there's bullish divergences doesn't mean they have to play out. But so as we start breaking up out of this range that formed with really defined bullish absorption. So again, just if the aggregate of all this price action shows a huge imbalance of negative delta, there's way more market selling than there is market buying, yet price holds up. It's just signs bigger traders are stepping in to build long positions, absorb all that selling. But then even as the uptrend starts, okay, well, maybe there's no reason. It's not the first time that price has rallied. Uptrend starts, and we see aggressive selling immediately into the uptrend. That could get kind of bearish. We see 6.7 million, 9.7 million, 4.5 million, 6.7 million negative delta. And we see CVD making a lower low relative to price. Price higher low, CVD lower lower, lower low. And then price rallies higher. And then we see another big sell-off candle here. CVD making another relative lower low. And this is an early sign that, okay, well, first off, we have big bullish divergences forming here over days. And then as price pushes higher, bullish divergence, and that's caused by price moving up, even though relative to this price action, there's way more aggressive selling than aggressive buying. The only way that happens is if big traders step in, and they continue to step in and push price higher. And so you could argue we may be seeing some early signs of that, right? Price ranging here with some bullish absorption, obviously, in the broader context. There's bullish absorption. We've already gone over that. So an uptrend is starting. There's a big sell-off getting absorbed. And although there's heavy selling into this move up, price is just grinding higher. So, yes, somebody commented that an IBIT long just got soaked. And so here, we're seeing a little bit of a, there's a confluence in a way, but the order flow is a little different here on IBIT. The bullish part is the same. I mean, there's been bullish absorption up through this uptrend, but there's a bigger bearish divergence forming here with IBIT. This is the BlackRock ETF, by the way. 152K in this 5-minute candle. So a very clear bearish divergence forming here. And it'd be locally. It's nothing major on the higher time frames, but it would lend to a retracement on IBIT as a little more likely. And here on Bybit, all we have is a few $1 million of trap longs up at the highs, which isn't insignificant locally. So what I'd say is this, is even though there's no bearish divergence on Bybit, I already pointed out when price was up here that seeing a pullback from here wouldn't be surprising locally at a minimum, and see what happens down here. And that's more enforced as a stronger idea now on Bybit. I mean, sorry, IBIT, the BlackRock ETF. This last 5-minute candle, some really aggressive longs coming in, price not moving, expecting a move to take those out. Wouldn't be surprising. But that's all very low time frame, and it's not a strong signal necessarily from an order flow perspective on Bitcoin in terms of these longs could close at any time, and how much work do you really put in to squeeze out 3 million longs? But we'll see. Somebody says, how can I find the DCA on Coinalyze? It's CVD. DCA is dollar cost averaging. CVD is cumulative volume delta. You can see it here, CVDs. So you have just for this data, which is the line graph data, you have your volume at the top, your delta inside the candle, and your cumulative volume delta, candle to candle to candle, which is what your line's showing. So the reason this yellow line goes down a lot right here is because it's a 5.9 million negative delta candle. This is showing you the 5.9 million negative delta. And for example, the reason that CVD goes lower than this candle, so at this candle, CVD is here, because we had a decrease in cumulative volume delta from 4.8 million to negative 49K. So that's a decrease of 5.9 million in this candle. And if I add together the 96K, 64K, 574K, 437, 463, 222, and then here's the big sell-off candle getting absorbed. Add it all together, we see the CVD down there, the cumulative volume delta, which is displayed in this line graph. So yeah, you can get this CVD data on Coinalyze. I just want to note that you can't get it on TradingView that I know of. There's no indicator for it. There's an indicator that claims to be it, but it's just not actual order flow data. I kind of hope that live stream I did earlier just populates in there, because I don't want to go over everything again. All right, well, I think I'm just going to shut her down. New 4-hour candle coming in. Oh, a little bit of selling. I don't know. Let's just see what happens when we take these lows. Let's give it 3 more minutes till this 5-minute candle closes, because I could kind of walk through whatever's happening, I guess. What do you guys think? Whoever was here in the live stream earlier, that is now deleted, I think. When I give the case for ranging price action, does anyone here think that that is likely? It doesn't actually seem likely to me. I almost don't know how we do range here from an order flow perspective. But there's also something quite nice about this idea of a prolonged range that just looks so nice, especially with this fractal. I think it would wreck a lot of people. How do we range here for this long? So much bullish absorption. Makes sense in some ways, either break down or just reverse, but yeah, the chart looks really nice. I suppose all it takes is just no aggressive buying pressure, and if the bigger traders that are building long positions don't want to send price through the liquidity to the upside, they just don't they do a little bit of work to hold price down at the local highs. People continue getting more and more bearish and wrecked as we range, and then eventually we just take the lows and rotate back to the highs. I'll say this though, this is a very early, if you want to call it a prediction or you want to call it whatever you want, to be thinking about a really prolonged range here locally at the local range at the bottom of this range. So you could say like the bottom half of the bigger range. But the more and more we start forming rangy price action, the more and more I'm going to be interested in the prolonged range idea. And I might start looking for some trades, presuming that we're going to have a prolonged range here, both shorts and longs and more aggressive TPs pretty early on, getting ahead of the ranging idea. Yeah, well, so somebody's asking what I think about high block data. I could mention really quickly that in the Discord, when you're a member in the Discord, there is that data available, so you can pull heat maps and liquidations and all that stuff on different time frames, and you can select different coins, and it just populates into a private feed for you. So that said, in my view, the data is not irrelevant by any means. It's kind of a proprietary estimation, I suppose. But it's also kind of just horizontal levels. It's not really hard to imagine where the order flow data, or so the liquidations might be. For example, above these highs isn't a very complicated idea. And I prefer looking at order flow personally. But I think as just a general guideline, it can be useful, the high block data, especially for people that don't quite understand the market, like what generates liquidity, for example. So some people don't even understand that there is a idea of that there's people on the other end of every trade, but it's not surprising, for example, to see a hot spot right above us, above these highs at 65K. And I guess for me, I can already, I broke down earlier, why we might expect there to be a lot of liquidity up there. Because we've been in a strong downtrend, and there's going to be a lot of trailed stops there for shorts. And stops there on this breakdown even. Everyone looking for that lower high. Getting stopped out. But I think order flow. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Let's take a look at order flow. I think order flow data is a little more interesting to see where price might be pushing towards liquidity and where liquidity is building up. But we can just note a lot of longs. It's a mix of risk coming in here. The open interest candle's not just straight negative delta, but we can just note 4.3 million negative delta coming in here. So some of these longs up at the top are going to be relenting on that position. Some early signs of local absorption again forming. Maybe come and take this low, maybe not. So if we spring up straight from here, then I'll stay on the live stream. But this is yeah, we can see still heavy selling getting absorbed. Doesn't necessarily mean this candle has to be the low of this local continuation, but more confirmation in my view that the high is very unlikely to be in. So you'd be expecting price to continue higher into this liquidity as quite a reasonable idea. And I think if the roles were reversed here, and the trend was reversed and we were seeing heavy buying, you'd expect the downtrend to be continuing. We can see some aggressive longs coming out at the highs here before this pullback. Nothing major. Again, a minor pullback. All right. Of course, watching live price action does become very akin to watching paint dry. The context here, from an order flow perspective, let's say, essentially can't change. The divergences are too big, so like it either plays out or it doesn't. Who's ever pushing and holding price up either pushes up into liquidity or they don't. And so the play here, in my view, would just be to set alerts up above these highs. And come back when price is testing them, and then have some alerts set back at these lows. Be interesting. These highs will be interesting as well. Come review order flow, see what's going on. But I guess from what can be helpful to talk about here from before I sign off is if you're an inexperienced trader, you can often find yourself just like, say you were in along from here or from here or from here, and you have this rejection from the trend line, and you're not aware that, not to say we have to bounce, but price often does come back and retest levels before another move up, and you don't have any order flow experience. It's just very easy to get shaken out of your longs by any of this, because you're already kind of really bearish. You're already kind of freaked out. We've been in all these rallies have been getting smoked, been in a strong downtrend, so maybe some of that order flow knowledge could be helpful for just being willing to hold through some of this local volatility. Okay, I'll end the live stream by answering this last question. I keep saying this. Somebody asks, curious what you copied the price action pattern from. I like it also. So I will just quickly go over that really quick. And then I'll end the live stream. All right. So I just did some thinking today about what a prolonged range would look like here. And I recognize some of this price action on various time frames. Similar price action at least. So the preceding price action here that I recognized is down into this, right? So this is this high we made, lower highs. Even put in this very similar structure before the move down. We came back down, and in this case we actually swept some established lows, right? For the first move to the downside. Formed a range, retest those lows, make a new high, and then grind down much lower before the move to the upside. So I copied that fractal, and this is what it looks like overlaid on this price action. So we're going to have this high come in. We have this low, all three of these little highs here, just a little range, pullback, impulse, move to the downside. And then we'd be looking for something like this, right? So we can even come back down into the fractal. Why would we be maybe interested in a sweep of this high? Well, very similar, right? Price ranges here, pushes up, takes this high. That'd be like this high. We form a little range. We come back down and retest this low. That would be this low. We have this in the fractal. It's kind of hard to see here. Let's turn up the heat. We chop around here, sweep some local lows, maybe come back down and BART the bottom of the range, impulse, and take this high, just like in this fractal, right? These are common ideas. We have an established high here. We see the fractal in this yellow fractal. We wick through it, and then boom, rotate all the way back down to the lows of the range. That would be like this high or this high. Here we have an extra high, either one. Grind down, sweep the range lows again, maybe have an immediate reaction, and then just grind into them. Everyone gets super bearish, breakdown shorting into this, and then only to impulse to the upside. This would be just an absolute nightmare for a lot of traders, which makes it kind of interesting. All right, so I'll just quickly show two other fractals that, again, are not, I showed them in the last live stream. I'll just go over them quickly. This one, the preceding price action isn't very similar, but the ranging price action is quite similar, especially the early parts of the range. Lots of similarities here. Structurally very similar. And again, I can just kind of remember trading some of these and how it felt. And then ending with a grind down into the lows. And look at this look at this. We used to get this all the time at lows. Lately it's just been super wicks, where you have this little like, I can't even move over here, where you have this breakdown. We had it both here, right here and here. You have this breakdown, this little consolidation. Price wicks that local low into a strong impulse. It's like a breakdown, a little range down here. Everyone really bearish, tons of shorts open over the course of like 12 hours. And then price just breaks straight up. This little pattern at the bottom, quite nice. Be nice to see something like that. But anyways, that is taken from here. The summer of 2021. And then I'll just share it really quickly. The last fractal, which is ends in a breakdown. I mentioned I don't think this one's as compelling, but the internals would be quite similar. Would look very similar to the other ranges that we just went over, except after taking these highs, would end in a breakdown into this kind of 53K region, which is kind of an interesting idea as well. So I'm going to kind of keep all three fractals available. I'm just going to see how price progresses if we range here at all. Wowzer. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so probably looking for a move up here pretty quick. I'll just say 4-hour candle opening in 3 minutes. But so here's this example on IBIT that we brought up. The big aggressive longs, well, they just all closed. So they were shaking out pretty quick here. You can see all that volume coming in at the lows of this wick. And not just the longs that opened there, more. And now we also are seeing some more aggressive selling coming in on Bitcoin. So again, we almost have a bullish divergence against these lows again. So all this means is that there's aggressive market selling, and somebody's just stepping in here, holding up price, presumably to push it higher. So 4-hour candle opens in 2 minutes. Maybe we come and like wick these lows. Maybe we break down further, but ultimately, I'd just say that price can chop around here, probably going to see higher. IBIT order flow and Bitcoin or Bybit's order flow, both bullish. I mean, it's so bullish, it's kind of hard to imagine we reject from these highs. It's hard to imagine there's so much liquidity up here that it's even relevant, but we'll see. I mean, look, for anyone who looks at order flow regularly, just look at this. Look how bullish this looks coming up into this impulse. It's pretty wild. But nice technical structure up here. I mean, if I have a bias, I'll be frank. It's that we don't range here for 2 weeks and we just push higher. And it's basically because of the order flow. That's the only reason. But I could build some cases for a range and it still kind of stay in, keep some of the bullish order flow intact. Some of those ideas. So very interested to see what happens if and when we take this high up above. New 4-hour candle just opened. I know I keep saying that I'm going to end the live stream, but let's see what happens here. It would be funny. Now, this would be kind of funny. Maybe not funny haha, but funny boo-hoo. If we just nuke here and we just break down. That would be atypical. Kind of hard to explain from an order flow perspective. But like I said earlier, I mean, and I've been saying, I guess, in the last live stream, and as price is pushing up here, it makes sense to me that price is going to push higher. I can build that logic. It doesn't seem as likely that we're going to break down here. I can't even really understand what the case for that would be. Now, just because I can't understand what the case for that would be doesn't mean it's impossible. But where do you think I'm going? If I'm in a long and everything looks bullish to me, why would I close my long, right? I can still use risk management on my long. Like I don't have to, I mean, at this point, I don't even think I have to take a loss. I could just close a long at break even. I would be surprised already if price came back into these lows. But why not leave that risk on when everything I would want to see here is happening for higher? And if I'm wrong, then I guess I left some profits unrealized and on to the next one. But again, we can just see the bullish divergences forming all the way up and even across these local lows. Oh boy. All right. Well, I do have to end this live stream at some point, so let's put a time limit on this. We've shooken out some of these longs, presumably at the highs, with just a local pullback, getting bearish into the local lows. That's fine, I suppose. Again, that's not how I would trade. Like longing on these impulses with local invalidation being not even taking structure can be a pretty easy way to get chopped up, right? That's kind of happening to some of these people. Some of these longs closing out, expecting a move to the downside, presumably, and then we have some shorts opening. 2.7 with some aggressive longs opening limit longs opening as well. So market selling to this candle, 2.7 billion negative delta, giving us a deeper bullish divergence. Probably a little bit of liquidity resting under these local lows. So let's see what happens if we take them. get that little, we might get that little nice little sweep I'd mentioned earlier into the 4-hour open. So the 4-hour candle opens, it leaves a little wick behind on the local range, local lows, before continuation to the upside. And we get some of that volatility around this 4-hour candle. Take these little local lows. Again, I don't really care where the low comes in here. I don't even care if we come and retest this trend line. Be kind of hard to get there at this point if we don't have some pretty heavy selling coming in. But pretty much nothing here is going to stop me out of my long except for price coming back down and stopping me out of my long. I don't really care what happens locally here, because the bullish case is already made. None of these candles invalidate that. Price coming back down and stopping me out would, because that also should not be happening here in most cases. If these bullish divergences are going to remain intact, you're expecting these higher lows to hold up. Nothing crazy, but some aggressive shorts piling up here between these lows. Getting put underwater a little bit. We could kind of view this as a bit of a range forming if we hold up here. Some local wicks down here as well. I'm kind of curious where this comes in. 382. Just the longer we kind of linger here, I just want to see, still like quite a ways away. That'd be kind of interesting. So this might be something I would consider adding to logs. A big bullish divergence would be pretty aggressive just as a scalp. So looking for a clean local entry trigger, maybe like a break back above, and then just cut the ad on my scalp account if it doesn't get a continuation. But that would infer another 45 minutes to an hour. Price grinding down, take this impulse low. We already know there's going to be a bullish divergence locally. There already is one. If price comes down to that level, it will actually be against our major low. So the ideas for me here would just be longs on pullbacks if you get a nice clean technical setup. And the reason I would say that it might be kind of harder for price to come back into these lows around 62,600, but there's a nice technical 62,500 even. It's a nice little technical retracement idea there. It's just because we have some signs that there's limit buyers sitting here already. And so they would have to kind of give up this level for price to come down lower. And until they do, there's just no evidence that they will. They're limit buying to this level for now. They could be incentivized to come grab this liquidity if there is some, but for now they're just showing that they want to just keep absorbing. 5.9 million, you know, smaller amounts of negative delta here. 841K, 4.4 million, 2.7 million, a million, 1.2 million. Risk coming in to this local low. Bullish divergence is getting bigger and bigger as they continue to absorb here. And so that's the only reason I'd say it's less likely that happens. Someone says, I personally think the halving has way less impact than everybody expects. Like every halving, it gets less important. And I think, to be honest, I don't even know what people are expecting from Bitcoin halving. What do I think? Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of obviously the actual impact on supply with this halving is pretty minimal. It's kind of more of a psychological idea, right? But it's not a surprise. Would I expect there to be volatility potentially into anything that happens after the halving? Yeah. I mean, let's just say that there's probably some set of traders whose current mindset is, I'm waiting till after the halving because they have a thesis. Like either there's going to be some set of traders that say, Bitcoin's going to pump after the halving. It's just waiting for the halving. Or it's going to dump after the halving. And it's going to be really bearish after the halving. And so whatever happens that confirms that in their heads, maybe like a big green candle, I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of trading activity around those, either and people shorting, people longing, trading their thesis, or if the price dumps into the halving, so to speak, just more people interested in trading that, waiting for the quote unquote halving. But like what about the halving isn't going to be quote unquote priced in? The market's just going to wreck people. And I wouldn't be surprised to see, because it's in the minds of everyone, people wanting to trade around whatever volatility is produced around the halving. But you know, what impact is it actually going to have is almost impossible to guess, other than to know it's irrelevant and just kind of, for me, I'm just going to take technical trades into it and expect some volatility. But I guess people who have like a really strong thesis around the halving, where they'd say like, well, because of the halving, and you know, there's going to be X amount of Bitcoin, X amount less Bitcoin mined in each block, and that's going to send the price way up here, because I honestly think that's all nonsense. Any impact that the halving would have at a fundamental level on price should have played out by now. The day that the halving takes place is kind of irrelevant. Okay, well, you know, it can be kind of fun to just hang out and sit here and chat, but it can also be kind of not fun. So after a while, just watching nothing happen. Bullish divergences on the move up, big level above. Good luck, everyone. If you're in the Discord, I'll probably be sending some updates in there as price does or does not test some of these local highs. Peace out, everyone.